And another liquor lotto store. That's not the only thing that's here, though. More illegal dumping, eh? What a bunch of twats. For this video, we start things off by heading north on Lahser at McNichols. This will be my 27th video in my Detroit series where I go through the entire city. This area will be bounded by the Southfield Freeway to the east, Outer Drive and Puritan to the south, and the city limits to the north and west. Where we are right now is in a small neighborhood called Old Redford, which of course is dominated by yet another liquor lotto store. I mean, what street corner in Detroit doesn't have one of these? You know, in Michigan they say that you're never 6 miles away from a body of fresh water, but in Detroit, it seems like you're never 6 blocks away from either a party store or a Dollar General. You know what though? I can hear people screaming at me in the comment section already because Old Redford isn't known for just having another trashy convenience store. No, this place is actually highlighted by the Redford Theater on the right. Some way, somehow, this gem has been able to stick around after all of these years, which is quite amazing, honestly, with the site of urban blight and decay dominating most of the immediate surrounding area. The Redford Theater first opened on January 27, 1928, and in 5 years, there's probably going to be some kind of special event to celebrate the theater's 100th anniversary. And that'll be a cool moment in all seriousness because what's even more incredible is that this theater has been in continuous operation since it opened. You know, most theaters like Redford have had considerable gaps in their timeline where they would be closed because business had declined, or maybe it would be a really expensive renovation and nobody would want to pay for it, but not the Redford Theater. And with Redford being in the hood, I'm sure it hasn't always been easy for the place to stay open. Another interesting thing about the theater is that originally, the inside had a Japanese theme, but during World War II, every design piece that helped give the Redford Theater a Japanese look was either removed or covered up, because, you know, the US and Japan weren't getting along at that time. Well, hopefully the Redford Theater can continue to be in operation for a long time, and maybe the surrounding neighborhood can eventually gain some positive momentum from the theater, because right now, the area around the theater seems to be lacking. For example, just north of the theater sits a mostly empty block. Aside from the tiny neighborhood that is Old Redford, the surrounding area was all a part of Redford Township, as back in the day, Redford Township was bounded by 8 Mile to the north, Joy Road to the south, Inkster to the west, and Greenfield to the east. During a time period between 1915 and 1926, Detroit's city limits grew triple in size due to aggressive annexation, including over half of Redford Township. Today, Detroit's border with Redford Township is 5 points, from 8 Mile to Puritan, and Telegraph from Puritan to some railroad tracks south of I-96. Then the border runs between Hazleton Avenue and Parkway Streets from the tracks down to Joy Road. Unlike modern days where people will fight tooth and nail to stay independent, back then it was actually desirable to be annexed by a big city. At least it was for a short time. It was like a win-win situation. Cities wanted to expand and people wanted to be provided services that cities offered to their residents. Most of Redford Township back then was still farmland, and the developed residential areas didn't have a sewer hookup. The developed areas also had undesirably narrow streets, including Grand River Avenue, and Detroit promised to modernize much of the developed area upon annexation, along with providing better utilities. To the right is actually an abandoned golf course, and today it just looks like an open grass field. The Rogel Golf Course is bounded by 7 Mile, Berg, and Lahser roads along with neighborhood streets. The golf course closed in 2013, and it's been sitting here overgrowing with vegetation ever since. Back in 2007, the Greater Grace Temple purchased the golf course before closing it in 2013, claiming that the golf course was never profitable. The church then wanted to turn the golf course into a cemetery. To me, that seems like that was their plan from the start no matter what. They thought they were being slick. You ain't slick, Greater Grace Temple. Nuh-uh. But after the city turned down their request to turn the land into a cemetery, the land is now owned by the city after plans were announced in 2018 to make this the next city park. And we'll just have to wait and see if that ever happens, just like we have to do with most of the projects in Detroit. The Rogel Golf Course was actually one of the first golf courses in Detroit, as it opened in 1914 by Max Fisher, who was a successful Detroit area businessman back in the day. Now, side note, as Max Fisher isn't to be confused with Charles Fisher, who founded the Fisher Body Company, in which Detroit's famed Fisher Building is named after. Anyway, the area surrounding the Rogel Golf Course was not city-owned land at the time of the course being developed, as most of this area in 1914 was rural and a part of Redford Township. So, with that said, back to briefly talking about good old Redford Township. The name Redford was chosen for the township in the early 1800s, as back in the day, natives and the original European settlers in the area would ford the Rouge River, and Rouge is French for red, so Redford is the name that they came up with. Meanwhile, we are currently traversing the streets of the Old Redford neighborhood, and honestly, it doesn't look so bad here. It's a tiny neighborhood, and it always has been, as there's only about 700 people living within the neighborhood boundaries, and it only consists of a few blocks. This neighborhood, however, is a part of the much larger 48219 zip code, which is where we will stay throughout the rest of this video. As a whole, the 48219 is home to just under 44,000 people, and the median household income is $39,000 per year. Only 14% of adults 25 and older hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and the median value of owner-occupied housing units is $62,000, while the poverty rate is 26%. So overall, those numbers aren't that great, but I can tell you that after going through all of Detroit's neighborhoods within this 28-video Detroit series, for Detroit standards, those economic numbers are pretty good. However, you can still find hundreds of places that would have a better quality of life throughout southeastern Michigan. But if you're someone who's like not just bikes and you absolutely hate living in any suburban area so much that you actually decide to leave the country and live overseas, then maybe taking a look in the extreme northwestern area of Detroit would be a place to start. Maybe. It's still a suburban feel out here though, so you might just be better off living in a nearby suburb that provides better police and fire protection along with better public schools, and quite frankly, just better all around everything. Also, remember that if you're going to live in Detroit, you're going to be paying some of the highest property taxes in the nation. Although that bill might not be so high if you have a home that's valued at only $62,000, like the average home is valued at within the 48219 zip code. Some of the reasons as to why the property taxes are so high in Detroit is due to the fact that the home values are so low, and the poor management of the city's finances over decades worth of time. And I've talked about those things in other videos within my Detroit playlist, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already, and the link for that is down below. Detroiters also have some of the highest car insurance rates in the country. Michigan is a no-fault state, so car insurance rates will automatically be higher because of that. However, since property crime is so high in the Motor City, and since there are so many Detroit residents that are uninsured drivers, car insurance rates for Detroit residents are considerably higher than they are in the suburban cities throughout the metro area. Detroiters also have to deal with inconsistent emergency response times, and the Detroit public schools continue to be some of the worst in the nation. And it's my opinion that until Detroit can build some positive momentum to lower the crime rates throughout the city, raise property values, lower the tax rates, and invest in the overall quality of life throughout the city's neighborhoods, Detroit won't be able to come back the way that it wants to. And it's sad, because a neighborhood like Old Redford shows the potential for the city's neighborhoods overall. You can see through the eye test that this could be a really nice area, and that's the case throughout most of Detroit's neighborhoods. Either it looks like it could be a really nice area with just a little bit of investment, or you can tell that it was once a really nice area. What's also crazy is that as soon as you cross the city limits, no matter what side of Detroit you're on, you can almost immediately tell a difference, as all of a sudden you'll stop seeing blighted homes, boarded up shops on the main thoroughfares, and you won't see near as many sketchy looking liquor lotto stores. Now, there's a few exceptions where you'll cross into neighboring ghetto suburbs like River Rouge, maybe East Point, or the often forgot about Royal Oak Township, maybe some parts of Warren, but generally speaking, it's a noticeable difference once you leave the city almost everywhere that you cross the city limit line. To the right is the site of where the former Thomas Houghton Elementary School once stood. The school closed in 2009 and it was demolished 7 years later in 2016. Here are some Google Street View shots of the school while it was still standing. And today it looks like it's some sort of community garden. And in this video so far, we've mostly been staying away from urban blight. We've actually been seeing some neighborhoods that are in pretty decent shape, but now we're going to start seeing more of the urban blight because there is plenty of it around in this area of the city. And we'll get one last view of the Redford Theater before heading over to the area of Shiawassee and 7 Mile. By the way, if you're interested in seeing more of this area, I'll have a separate video uploaded on my second channel called Chris Harden's Travel Archives, where I'll upload all of the lost footage that I filmed but didn't end up using in this video. And the link for that will be down below. And if you remember the earlier talking point of the abandoned golf course near 7 Mile and Lahser, this is the Greater Grace Temple to the left that we just passed. And it's the organization that owned the golf course starting in 2007 and when it closed in 2013. We are now in the neighborhood that is known as Berg-Lahser, which is named after the two main north and south thoroughfares that serve the east and west borders, respectively, for this neighborhood. The community is also bounded by 8 Mile to the north and 7 Mile to the south. About 3,700 people live in this neighborhood, and the median household income is $38,000 per year. Only 16% of adults 25 and older hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and the median value of owner-occupied housing units is $76,000. And just like some other areas that we've seen in this video, the Berg-Lahser neighborhood doesn't look near as bad as some other Detroit neighborhoods do. But of course, urban blight is still present throughout the neighborhood. And going back to the earlier talking point, this area was once all a part of Redford Township until it was annexed in the 1920s. And most of the homes in the Berg-Lahser neighborhood were built throughout the 1940s and 50s. Before that, this was all farmland. And on the left, we just passed by some schools that are not closed. They're actually open. Well, throughout the rest of this video, we're mostly going to be seeing residential side streets. We're going to come across one of the more well-known high schools in Detroit, and we're going to be taking a stroll down Big Bad 7 Mile towards the end. And there's going to be even more history to mention there. To the left, you have another open school building, which is good to see. This is the Madison Carter Academy. If you haven't been able to tell throughout all the videos in my Detroit series, Detroit has way more abandoned schools than it has open schools. A little bit of a change of scenery here, as the next couple of blocks don't look so good. And yet another example of illegal dumping in Detroit, as when I drove through, this street was full of trash on both sides. What a bunch of twats. Whenever you do a search on YouTube for illegal dumping in Detroit, a lot of the times the story leads to a white guy driving a pickup truck that lives in the suburbs. Hilljacks. Well, that was a sight to see, to say the least. From here, we're going to skip ahead to where we head down 7 Mile through this section of the city. And once again, to see more of what you just saw, make sure to check out my second channel, and the link for that will be down below. And I'll soon upload a video that will show all of the lost footage that I filmed but didn't use for this video. Meanwhile, there's some real hood hollering going down on 7 Mile. What an absolute jabroni this guy is. You have to be kidding me.
Yeah. Alright. Yeah. Alright. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, looks like the trolls even like to jam on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it looks like we have an abandoned Burger King here. Well, the cops showed up, so we had to change the music so that they didn't think that we were trying to get into trouble or anything. But just up ahead is the intersection of 7 Mile and Berg Road, and on the south side of 7 Mile is the old Rogel Golf Course that I talked about earlier in the video. Also located at the intersection on the northwest side was a theme park called Edgewater Park. The site was 23 acres large, and at its peak, it had 23 rides. The park sits where the Greater Grace Temple is located today. Edgewater Park opened on July 2nd, 1927, which is around the same time that Detroit annexed this area from Redford Township. It's also about the same time that the land started to develop, and the park continued to operate all the way until 1981. Here's an old photo of the park from the Wayne State University Library. And here's an abandoned apartment complex that we just passed on the north side of the road, followed by the site of where Edgewater Park used to be. Psh, stupid truck. But yeah, the north side of 7 Mile right here used to be a pretty big theme park. Well, lastly, I'm going to show a clip where I head south on Evergreen from 8 Mile, as on the southeast corner of the intersection with Evergreen and Trojan is Henry Ford High School. Wait, what? Man, you Detroit residents, I swear, learn how to drive. No wonder the car insurance rates are high here. Alright, well, Henry Ford High School is home to the Trojans, and Henry Ford High was established in 1957. There's been a lot of notable alumni to walk through these halls, including former NBA player and current Detroit Pistons color commentator Greg Kessler, and I met him once, but he probably doesn't remember because at the time I was a nobody, trying to make a name for myself in sports media, and it was a very brief encounter, but I remember him being a great guy. Former president of the Detroit City Council, Monica Conyers, make sure to check out my Detroit playlist to see what corruption she was involved in, and a bunch of other former NBA and NFL players that had 3 to 5 year careers. Well, that's going to be it for this video, and if you want to see more of this area of the city, make sure to check out my second channel, where I'll have another video uploaded featuring all of the lost footage that I filmed but didn't use in this video. And we have only one more video left in all of the Detroit series. It will be Belle Isle, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Nonetheless, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as doing all of those things helps these videos destroy the evil monster that is the YouTube algorithm. Also make sure to hit that notification bell and select yes, so that you can be notified every time that I upload a new video. If you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy checking out some of the featured playlists on this channel. Videos with amazing insights on other places like what you saw here can be found in my Detroit playlist, my American Hoods playlist, or in my Michigan playlist. Last but not least, if you can't get enough of me on here, you can always go follow me on my other social media accounts, and those links are below. We'll see you next time. Peace.